It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
It's complete. Another touchdown!
Cougar Sports Saturday. A presentation of KSL Sports.
Left wing for three. He got it again!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Here are your hosts, Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Hour number 3 coming your way. It's the final show of June. Next show we have will be after the 4th of July. We'll have a lot of interviews that we had from the golf event, which was very fun. Weather was immaculate. Before we get into our BYU football position preview for the week, quick thoughts on the golf event?
A lot of fun. I'm wearing the polo that was given to us. It's pretty cool vintage helmet logo that says BYU Media Golf Classic. BYU always does a good job. They're always great with, giving us this chance and really giving us an opportunity in the summer to, talk with the coaches and players and talk ball. It was a little bit awkward with the elephant in the room with Jake Retzloff, and no one was really answering questions. Parker Kingston did talk a little bit about just the dynamics of the locker room right now, but that aside from that, it was just good to understand that football is around the corner. It's been a really quick off season with BYU basketball going to the Sweet 16, the eventful transfer portal, the exciting official visits and recruiting, and well, here we are now. It's July 4th, and next thing you know, it's Big 12 Media Day and fall camp, and the season is here. So it was just a nice check-in on the football team, but really there's not much to learn from that event right now because this football team is pretty known as far as everything but the quarterback spot, and it's just a matter now of continuing to build on the successes that they had last year and taking it to a greater level in 2025.
One position, Mitch, as we transition into our position preview, that will be really important, especially considering the news of yesterday and the possibility that Jake Retzloff could be missing some time, is this running back room. Can you rely on, whether it is Jake or someone else, can you rely on this group to make the offense unpredictable, well-balanced, and take some pressure off the quarterback? What are your overall thoughts on this year's running back room?
It's a retention-based group. They didn't go from the outside and go to the portal to turn for help. They're focusing on developing from within, and I think it's a really talented unit. And there's a lot of really intriguing players in this running back unit, particularly LJ Martin. We got to start there, the third-year running back for BYU. Back-to-back seasons, the leading rusher, but yet to hit the 1,000-yard mark in his BYU career, at least, or not in career, but in a single season at BYU. LJ Martin has been dealing with injuries the past 2 years. Can he stay fully healthy? That's going to be the big question on him. But that Alamo Bowl performance where he was the offensive MVP was, to me, a glimpse of how good this guy can be. And I think every Cougar fan listening has known that L.J. Martin is a good football player, but can he be a Jamal Williams? Can he be, one of the all-timers, Tyler Algier, that pantheon of great BYU running backs? Can he be in that conversation? And I think that Alamo Bowl was that real breakthrough for him to start to entertain that thought. And spring ball was nothing much learned there for him because I think BYU coaches were just very careful with him. Not to say we got to put him in saran wrap because he's just going to get hurt by any touch, but with his injury history, making sure he's fully healthy, you want him ready 9 weeks from today. I don't need to see any more of LJ Martin, but I just think, Matt, he's got all Big 12 potential, and no one's talking about him nationally, but to me, LJ Martin could be a special Tyler Algier type of single season in BYU, and they need a big production year from him. I think he's got to be outstanding for the Cougars.
And if it's not him, I think he'll have a great year, by the way. But if there are injuries or if this next guy is just putting up the kind of impact we saw in that Kansas State game, you got to love the depth you have with Sione Moa coming back. I thought he was outstanding last season, and he brings you a little different flair than LJ Martin. I loved in that Colorado game that you referenced, LJ breaking tackles, making plays in the open field, but Sione Moa, to me, was clearly the team's best runner at yards after contact last season. He was fantastic, and it's unfortunate he had an injury that kind of derailed the momentum after that Kansas State game, but your top two with LJ and Sione, that is a great top two. And look, in a perfect world, they're both healthy, and you can distribute the carries, and you don't have to workhorse anybody, but you feel good given 20-plus carries to either of those guys, and that's a nice luxury to have.
And the great thing about L.J. Martin being lightly used, and again, it wasn't injury-based. It was just more precautionary, just making sure that he's good to go for fall. Sione Moa got a lot of the first-team reps, and I thought he looked outstanding. You know, when I think back to March and spring ball practices, the guys that always stood out to me every time we had a media observation period, Keelan Marion, he's gone now. Not to worry about talking about him now. He's off to Miami. Then Sione Moa. I thought every time I saw him play, he did what you were talking about, yards after contact. He just gets positive yards, and he takes care of the ball. I think back to last year, too, at this time when, you know, in spring ball, you could easily discredit it, you know, 4-team reps, 3rd-team reps. But he'd always make plays. And then when he got called upon last year, he was great. That running back unit for BYU, you feel a lot better about this group because of how it played out last year. It wasn't ideal to have LJ Martin dealing with the shoulder, and then it was the ankle that he suffered against SMU. But it created opportunities for players like Miles Davis, who's now with Utah State, but he got to play. Enoch Nawahine got to play, who's back with the team, and he's going to be one of the top 4. Sione Moa played. So many different guys played to where Aaron Roderick's got and Harvey Unga, the running back coach, have this valuable actual game reps. It's one thing to do it in practice, but it's another thing to actually do it in a game where you go, they performed well. And that was an undefeated BYU football team through the first 9 weeks, and these guys were performing at a nice clip to where it was not derailing the season despite not having LJ Martin. That just gives you a lot of confidence, and that momentum continues to build. And I think it's one of the reasons why BYU did not go to the portal to supplement LJ Martin, because they're like, we have actual game film on the Sione Moas, on the Enoch Nawahines. We like these guys. And then you pair them up with some young studs in Pokayawa Hunga, and then Jovesa Damuni, who's more of a deeper prospect. We don't know much yet on him, but it's more, you know, projection based. He got a little bit of second team reps at times in spring ball. That's your top 5, and that's pretty good. And I think there's a feeling like they can dig into that depth and give a necessary breather to Martin, and the offense can still continue to produce at a high level.
Who do you think's the best NFL prospect in that group?
It's got to be L.J. Martin to me. Running backs in the NFL are just always difficult. I almost just think it's going to be at best a 6th-rounder or an undrafted free agent. Maybe you're seeing a little bit of a surge again in the running back position as you're seeing some guys go, you know, first round, like the Saquon Barkleys, the Bijan Robinsons, but those are exceptions, not the norm. But I'd say LJ still, because of his opportunity, the volume, the production so far. He'd be my pick. Would you say something different?
I would. I would say Sione Moa, and I might be biased with some recency, but I kind of see a little Cam Scadaboo there for Sione Moa, just an ability to get something out of nothing. And I feel like there is a value there in the NFL to just always make positive plays. Even if you're a little undersized, if you have this just reckless ability to get extra yards, I think there is a value there. Now, both of them, Mitch, they got to prove they can be healthy. And they got to also, I think both of them need to show a little bit more explosion this year, a little more home run ability. But I think Martin and Moa, I think, have the potential. It's just about putting it on the field.
An underrated piece to LJ Martin, too, in his career arc. How does he become as a leader? You know, become more vocal. You sometimes hear maybe it's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek from teammates, but sometimes they say, I've barely heard from the guy. Maybe on the defensive side players. LJ's a quiet guy. He kind of sets his example by what he does on the field. I feel like with him, and it's not as pressing at running back compared to, say, quarterback, but he's going to take on a bigger stage. And does he become more of a leader that's finding his voice a little bit more? I just feel like that, to me, I don't know how you measure that, but I feel like it unlocks something that's, you can maybe take it to another level as far as a player goes when you have the great on-field production, but also you're a leader off the field too, and you're vocal, and you're someone that sets that example. And I think maybe it's a little bit of seeing what transpired last year with the 11-2 season, and vocal leaders like Batty, like Connor Pay, that put themselves out there and set the tone for this program. That was huge for BYU, and I would expect on the offensive side it starts with Chase Roberts on the wide receiver position, but LG's got to be there too, in my opinion, because he's going to be someone that a lot of Cougar fans look upon to perform at a high level on the field, but off the field, I think he's got to be a leader for his teammates as well.
Breakout candidate for you?
I think Sione Moa probably would be the guy, because it wouldn't surprise me if he's someone that's north of 550 yards in the season and LJ still gets his. I think this is a football team that wants to run the ball. Like Aaron Roderick, sure, he wants to stretch the field and throw the home run balls, but if he can get out of a game quick and just eat up that clock and run the football, they will. And I think they've got the personnel where you can do that and just lean on the ground attack with LJ Martin and Sione Moa. So Moa's going to get his, and I think he could probably be a bigger breakout player. He was that a little bit in K-State. It's just going to be a bigger sample size this year.
Yeah, it's him or Pokai for me, probably Sione. I mean, really, his impact isn't as big as you would think when you look at the numbers. He had 29 carries on the year for 144 yards. After that Kansas State game in which he had 15 carries for 76 yards, 5 yards a rush, he only had 8 carries the rest of the season. Think about that.
Houston game and Colorado, pretty much. I think he had maybe one touch against Utah.
One touch against Utah, 1 touch against Kansas, 2 against Houston, 4 against Colorado. So there's a big opportunity for him to take a surge. And Pokai is interesting just because how do you break him in? Like, if you want to flex him out into an alternate role, do you want to take snaps away from Parker Kingston and some of the wide receivers? I don't know. I think that group's really talented, so harder to break him in, but he's gotten rave reviews in the past from coaches, so he's another guy to keep an eye on.
I think the biggest question for this group is, for me, just can they stay healthy? Can LJ, can Sione Moa, can Nawahine, all these guys, can you just stay healthy? BYU, that position, it feels like, and maybe I'd have to dive into it a little bit more, but just from
post Algier, they have not been healthy.
Yeah, even before Algier, there was that year in 2018 where they go up to Utah and they're digging into their 4th string running back, and Hadley's playing like a stud, and they just had that position. Just seems like they get to a point where they're always digging to that 4th or 5th string, and can they just stay with the top 2 and not have to dig in and just work in the 3rd string guy in a situational base deal? That's what I hope for. Can they stay healthy? That's the biggest question for me.
For me, I sort of touched on it, but it's Pokai. How do you get him in? He's got the talent, but where does he get the touches? So I'm curious to see how they work Pokai in.
Real quick, before we get to a break, a deep sleeper, and this is a deep sleeper. Someone that I think could be pretty good down the road. I really liked what I saw from him in spring ball is Logan Payne. Matt Payne's son, brother to Tyler Payne, the linebacker. Again, it was like 4 team reps, but I value that. I think when you perform and you're coming off the mission, he was a baller at Weber High. I feel like, and eventually you're going to get to the hard count 105 in a few years. This year it's grandfathered in where, walk-ons can still be part of it. Valuable time for him to earn his place in the future with the program. But Logan Payne, I think, is a name to watch. I liked what I saw from him in spring ball.
Let's take a break. On the other side, I caught up with defensive coordinator Jay Hill earlier in the week at the Cedar Hills Golf Club. You'll hear the interview with the Cougar DC next.